I'm Luke.
And I'm Sato.
And we love theater.
We're pretty much theater geeks.
So we are bringing you this podcast talking about our experiences, mess-ups, and more.
Welcome to Stage Chat.
Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to Stage Chat Podcast, and I'm Luke, and it's actually just me today. No sorrow, but I'll explain that later. Okay, so today I'm covering pros and cons of double casting. Double casting. So you might have heard me and Sarah mention this in a few podcasts, and you probably know that we don't like it that much, but I'm going to elaborate on that later. So you might quickly be wondering, why isn't Sarah here and why is this called a tidbit? So the reason we're calling this as a tidbit is because only one of us is going to be recording in the tidbit episodes. So you might be wondering, why? Well, the main reason is that we can't always record together. So you see, we actually don't record in person together, we record from home. Recording from home, it's a bit more convenient, and also due to the COVID times, it's a lot more safe than us recording together in one space. So that's something we wanted to do. But because of that, we often can't find the time to record as easily. Due to this online school and all the COVID stuff, we're getting busy and new stuff keeps popping up days and days, and we don't always have the time to just sit down and record for an hour, know what I mean? So yeah, sometimes only one of us can record, but the other can't. And if it's getting close to a release date, we can't always record in advance, but if we don't have an episode and it's getting close to the release date, we want to still have something for you, so this is when a tidbit episode would come in. And another reason is that one might know more about a topic than the other. So for example, sometimes one of us knows more about a topic than the other person does. For example, Sarah knows a lot more about costumes than me, and I don't know as well about that, so he'd probably record that for a tidbit by himself. And yeah, that's mainly it. And something I wanted to say about that is tidbits are not going to be taking over the podcast. They're only going to appear every once in a while. It's just, we sometimes need to because we don't always have the time to record together, as I said, and all the other reasons. And I actually had a few announcements for you. So the first one is, episodes are going to try to be a bit more scripted and easy to follow, because we noticed that we used to just record and not have any script. We'd sometimes write down a few things, but not much. So we noticed we'd have a lot of likes and so's, and we still have some now, but we want that to be reduced a little bit. So now we have a paper that we're going to write down some guiding points for that podcast, and we think that might help the podcast just increase in quality a little bit. But you never know. So we're just going to try it. And if it works out good, then we'll keep going. And you might have also noticed that the intro music changed, and we're sorry about that. But you see, I was researching online about podcasts and stuff, and I realized that copyright and free use and all that stuff exists. And I couldn't just use that intro music in the podcast. So we actually had to change it to something that's royalty-free and copyright-free that I can use in the podcast without getting in trouble. Okay, so now let's get into the episode. So you might be wondering, what actually is double casting? So basically, in short terms, double casting is when two people play a role. They'll usually have two casts, or sometimes even three, but usually two. Sometimes they'll just cast the leads or the big parts, and sometimes they will put the entire cast for double casting. And this tends to appear in a lot of shows. Sometimes they use understudies, but double casting still comes a lot. And I'm going to give my opinion more about this later, but now I want to talk about the pros and cons. Okay, let's get into it. I just wanted to point out that I'm using a bit of points from the website theaterfolk.com, pros and cons of double casting. I'm not trying to steal it or anything. I just wanted to make sure I had good points and enough to say in the podcast, so a lot of credit goes to them, give them some love. Okay, so let's talk about the pros. One pro is that this is the main one, that more people get a chance to be in bigger parts. So a lot of times in shows, there won't be as many leads. Sometimes shows will just have 4 main people or 3, sometimes even 2, but that doesn't happen much. And often they want more people to have a chance. So what they'll often do is make double casting. And this tends to help a lot for helping kids get more examples and helping kids get more chances. And this also tends to help because sometimes directors and casting directors, they can't always choose between some actors because sometimes like 2 or 3 of them are really good. So sometimes they'll double cast the role or cast it 3 times or have a part 1, part 2 person, like you get the point. What's next? So now, something that's also pretty cool is that there can be more portrayals of a show. So often 2 actors will want to have the show in like a different portrayal. For example, in Peter Pan, we had one who was a bit more shy and sheltered, and we had one who was a bit more like vibrant and excited. And they both ended up working out really well. Another reason for double casting is that all actors can have a different approach, and sometimes shows can be way different but still follow the main point of the show. Know what I mean? And another one is that there's always a built-in understudy. So something that tends to happen is actors will get sick on their shows or be out of town or sometimes like a family member like issue or something. So that's when an understudy will take over. And if you have double casting, you automatically have an understudy to speak. One time that was really sad is I was in a show and one of the people, the show was double casted. One of the people, they got sick and then they couldn't perform for the rest of the shows. So the double casted person took over for them. And yeah, it's just something really convenient because understudies, I don't really like them because I feel like they just don't get to perform for what all they learned. But yeah, it can be something that always helps. So now let's talk about the cons. So one main one is that there's competition usually. So often there will be comparison between casts, like say cast A is better than cast B. We'd often have weird names for our double casting and stuff. But often like kids will fight each other or not get along with their double or compare. And this like often leads to like just like the show not going as well as it could be. And kids are stupid and yeah. But this can even happen with adults sometimes, even though adults tend to be more mature about it. Next up, so you have to have an even number of shows. So a lot of shows like to have 3 shows or 5 shows, sometimes even like 7 or something. But with double casting, it has to be fair, so there has to be an even number of shows, such as 2 or 4. Another thing is that it takes a lot longer than usual. Because there's 2 people for each role, it often takes twice as long to do it. And something also to note is that it will often feel like the 2 people in the cast aren't like doubles. They aren't getting as much attention as they should be because you kind of have to divide like the role and attention between them. And another thing like relating to that is that the actors will often get like less shows and like not as much like room to show what they want. Like for example, if a show has 4 shows there, then if it's double casted, usually the person will just get 2. And that's often like really sad to them because they've been working all this time and then they get such a small part. So I wanted to give my thoughts on double casting and some advice if you are going to double cast. So personally, I don't like double casting. I just notice there tends to be a lot of competition in between, even if like the directors try to like clear the air between the kids or something. And I don't know, it just seems like it seems like you don't tend to get as much like attention as you should be, and it's often just like split up. But if you are double casting, I have some advice. So number 1 is to be equal. So one time I was in a double casted show, and there was sort of favoritism to the other cast, like the second cast, and they'd often be going first for everything and always be picked. And like when we did the first run through of the show, they were picked, and like no one really knew why. And often like it will create more stress about which cast is going today, and is my cast going to be going today, and all about that stuff. So I recommend just being equal, like make sure it's alternating and make sure it's fair so that kids don't get mad and it doesn't feel like one cast is having an advantage like some shows tend to do. And this doesn't tend to happen as much because like financial reasons, but if you can, I recommend having more shows. Like for example, if you usually have 4, maybe you have 6, or maybe you have 8 even, but also that takes money. So that the kid who got the lead, they could like perform all they want and don't feel like, let's just say like robbed of their role. So yeah, that's all it for this episode today. And as you notice, tidbits tend to be a lot like shorter than regular episodes. That's why they're called tidbits. But yeah, when you have two people, you have more to talk about. So thanks for listening to this episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.